to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Hope everybody's staying safe out there. Thank you guys for your continued support on the channel. And for my third and final video of the day, I kind of wanted to just go over the complete roster for the New York Giants heading into the NFL draft after free agency and kind of just go over what I think their biggest needs are going into the draft. They kind of rank it after the fact and, go over some of their weaknesses and strengths on both sides of the football, both offense and defense. Obviously, the Giants filled in some holes after free agency, and we still have a lot of holes that need to be filled in, and the Giants are going to have to prioritize what's the most pressing need going into this season. As I've always said, I think this is a 2 or even possibly 3-year plan to really get this roster to it, to where it's really ready to compete to try to win a Super Bowl. But I think it's going to be important in how they prioritize what needs to be fixed in what order. So let's jump right into the New York Giants roster. We're going to start with the offense, and obviously that starts with second-year quarterback Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones last year had a strong rookie season for the New York Giants, gave us a lot of hope, a lot of promise. Obviously, there was a void when Eli Manning left the team. We needed to find a backup quarterback. Alex Tanney, as of now, is on the roster, but they went out there. They got a veteran guy with Colt McCoy. I like the pickup. Colt McCoy is a tough football player, a guy that's been around the league now for a decade, has played, recently with the Washington Redskins, and hopefully could show some things to Daniel Jones. Obviously, we live and die with Daniel Jones at the quarterback, not just for this year, but hopefully for the next 10 to 15 years. I thought it was important to bring in some guy with some experience. Daniel Jones even showed it last year. He's not going to be an Iron Man like Eli Manning. That's not a knock on Jones. Very few quarterbacks are ever going to be able to duplicate at least Eli Manning in that aspect. The guy never missed a start. So it's important. Your team's only as good as their backup quarterback. People say it all the time. Colt McCoy's not the most skilled guy, but for a team that is really still kind of in a rebuild phase, I don't think we need the greatest backup quarterback in the world. I think it's more important to have a guy backing up Daniel Jones that could show him the ropes, that's not going to eat too much into the cap, because we have much more pressing needs at other positions. We were not in a position to sign a backup quarterback for $7 or $8 million at this point in time. But, there's the quarterback depth. I really don't expect the New York Giants to spend a draft pick on a quarterback. If they do, it'll be one of those 7th-round picks. But being that they picked up McCoy, I think they wait probably another year if they're going to try to draft the backup quarterback for Daniel Jones. Next position we're going to talk about is the running back position. And obviously, much like the quarterback, we're set there at the starter with Saquon Barkley, the number 2 overall pick from just 2 years ago. When the guy's healthy, he's as good as anybody, arguably the best weapon in all of football. He's going to be phenomenal, especially if the Giants can shore up that offensive line. But I've talked time and time again about the backups. I think that they need to find sufficient backups for Saquon Barkley. Wayne Gallman's been backing him up for a while. He's had fumbling issues, hasn't been the most efficient runner, was not drafted by Gettleman. Obviously, we bring in a new coach with Joe Judge. No connections there. I thought they'd try to find a backup in free agency. They did. They brought in Dion Lewis. Lewis probably wouldn't have been my first choice, but he has connections with Judge. He's been a fairly successful running back, at least in parts of his career. He's going to be 30 years old. Is he a long-term solution? No, which is why I still think it's possible the Giants draft a running back, in the later parts of the NFL draft. But they very well may wait a year, similar to that of the backup quarterback, being that they filled in the backup role with Lewis this year, and you still have Gallman, who's more than serviceable as a third-string running back. But I was happy to at least see that they shored it up a little bit, but obviously Saquon Barkley is going to get the bulk of the carries, and I think even this year more so than any, he's going to be relied on heavily, being that Daniel Jones is learning a second-year offense. I think they're going to try to run the ball as much as possible, and with the corona, with this whole coronavirus thing, and obviously Jones is probably going to have less time to learn the playbook, things like that. I think they're going to rely on Saquon Barkley early and often, especially early in the season. Next, we're going to talk about is the wide receiver position. And I think it is necessary to try to find an outside presence opposite Darius Slayton. Shepard and Tate, to me, are they're short wide receivers. These guys are more guys that I think are going to live on the inside. Slot guys, they're definitely serviceable. When Shepard's healthy, he's a talented receiver, good blocker, tough wide receiver, guy I really like. He's, of course, had the concussion problems. Golden Tate, still one of the better slot receivers in the league. Doesn't create a lot of separation, but he's good after the catch. And a good locker room guy in Slayton. Well, Slayton showed a lot of upside last year. I think he had 8 touchdowns, had a really strong rookie season, and could definitely be a deep threat that really fits this offense as a vertical passing threat on the outside. I still think the Giants need to address wide receiver in the draft. as I've said all along, between rounds 3 and 5, they need a tall presence on the outside. The good news for the Giants, there's a lot of guys in this draft that are going to fall in that range that could fulfill that role. Chase Claypool would be beautiful in the 3rd. There's a number of guys, though, that I've gone over. But, yeah, I think there is a hole there that they need to address in the middle rounds of this year's draft. They definitely need a tall target for Jones, and that will help him out, similar to what Plaxico Burress did for Eli Manning early on in his career. Now we're going to go to the offensive line. I didn't really go over the tight end, but we know the tight end position, and they've addressed that a lot in the offseason with bringing in guys like Toifolo. They signed another guy yesterday from the Jets. You got Evan Ingram, obviously Caden Smith. They're pretty deep at that position, and they kind of have some versatility in the sense that Ingram's really like a pass catcher that they could line up on the outside, another weapon in the passing game, and then you got a lot of guys that could block at that position. The offensive line is a big problem, and it's by far the biggest problem on the offensive end of the football. I expect them to target the offensive line early and often. They have a lot of veterans, guys that have not performed that well. Hopefully with the new coaching staff, it will improve the offensive line dramatically. Mark Colombo did a great job with the Dallas Cowboys. They were ranked middle of the pack. He took over the job. They became one of the best, in all of football yet again. With Colombo. Of course, Colombo had a lot more talent there. Dallas Cowboys had 3 former first-round picks, so we can't expect them to wave a magic wand and turn these guys into Pro Bowlers. You need to invest early in the draft to try to get top-tier production out of those players. But Nate Solder, I think, is on his way out. I think it's his last year here with the New York Giants. I assume he'll be cut after this year. He's making $20 million a year. But hopefully Nate Solder can improve and get better with this coaching staff. He displayed his first year here, the last 8 games. He actually played very well with the Giants. I think he only surrendered 1 sack over that 8-game stretch. Last year he was abysmal. He gave up more pressures than anybody. Needs to get a lot better. It'll be interesting to see what they do. If they draft a tackle early in the first round, they could certainly shift Solder over to the right tackle, but he's definitely going to be a part of the starting lineup. The guards are set. You're going to have Hernandez, the former second-round pick, who regressed a little bit last year. We need him to bounce back this year. And, of course, Zeitler, who was our most consistent offensive lineman. We need a tackle. We need a center. And I think we need both of them in this draft. Fleming could certainly, he's a swing tackle. Do I want to lean on him as a starter day one with a second-year quarterback learning a new offense? Me personally, no. Gates played fairly well there, too, the last 2 or 3 games, and maybe they will elect to start one of those guys if they don't take a tackle in the first round. I think you definitely need a center. I know they're talking about experimenting with Gates. I'm sick of experimenting on the offensive line. They got to get this fixed. So I would like to see them take offensive linemen early in this draft at the center and tackle position, whether it's in the first, second, or third round, and this is still a weak unit. It was improved last year. I think they ranked around 22, 23 overall, which was an improvement. They've been around 30 the last 3 years prior, but it's still not a very good unit. And, obviously Barkley going down hurt the offensive line. They became a more predictable offense. You had a first-year quarterback with Daniel Jones. So I think that, in fairness, has something to do with the struggles of the O-line that Gettleman has spent a lot of resources to try to fix. But, they need to hit home on this draft and really get younger in that department. Now we're going to go to the defense. Defense, obviously, we'll start with the defensive line, and this is the biggest strength of the defense. I do not expect them to use a lot of draft capital on the defensive line. They spent the franchise tag on Leonard Williams, who's still only 26 years old. By all accounts, they're trying to work out a long-term extension. Williams played well with the Giants. The problem that people have, they don't think he was worth the trade. They don't think he's worth the $16, $17 million price tag, but he's a good football player, and you saw the Giants' run defense play better because of it. And I think a player like that will help the guys off the edge in this scheme. So I do like Leo, and I think he does improve this defensive line. Of course, Dexter Lawrence played great in his rookie year. I expect him to only get better. Dalvin Tomlinson's still a member of this team. I think the Giants' defensive line has the potential to be one of the better units in the league. I really do. I like what they got up there, not even counting guys like B.J. Hill, R.J. McIntosh, et cetera, et cetera. And it'll be interesting to see the versatility that they bring to this lineup. A guy like Jimenez, I think, is capable of moving up in a 4-3 front or even a 3-4 front. But they definitely have a lot of versatile players on this defense that can move around and play different roles. But the defensive line, I think, is very strong for the Giants, and I do not expect them to really look to draft it at all in this draft, if so, later in the draft. Next, we're going to talk about is the edge rusher position. Edge rusher, of course, you got Hossein Jimenez coming into his second year. You got Lorenzo Carter, who I think could be moved around. It'll be interesting to see how they utilize him. He could play on the edge. He could play in the middle. He could play up at the line. He did a little bit of everything. Kyler Fackrell, of course, they brought in from the Green Bay Packers, who had a lot of success with Patrick Graham 2 years ago when he was the linebacker coach. Had 10.5 sacks. I think that had a lot to do with bringing him in. I think it's very similar to the Marcus Golden acquisition the year before when they thought that Golden would fit the defensive scheme with Betcher. I think they're trying to hit a home run yet again with Fackrell. Is Fackrell a long-term answer? Probably not, but he could definitely be a third down situational pass rusher in the future when this team gets better. This unit still needs a lot of improvement, but there's definitely some upside here with the younger players. I expect them to try to draft another player probably within the first 3 rounds that could get after the quarterback. Still needs a lot of improvement on that end with the departure of Marcus Golden, and we'll see if the young players could take a step forward, with this year's football team. Now we're going to talk about the middle linebacker position. Middle linebacker, obviously we lose Alec Ogletree. We bring back David Mayo on a 3-year deal. Mayo, I think, is a very good player off the bench, a depth player. I don't necessarily want him to be in the starting lineup every day, but I think he's a really good pickup. I think it was an underrated find by Gettleman. Very good against the run, struggles in pass coverage, much like our big-name acquisition, Blake Martinez. Now, Martinez ranked very well in pass coverage, actually, 2 years ago. It was this past year when Graham left, and maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe that's what the Giants feel. He really regressed in that department. He was one of the worst coverage middle linebackers in the league. Very good tackler, though. I think he's led the league over the last 3 years combined. So you have some experience there. A guy that's a heady player. He's known to make good pre-snap adjustments at the mic in the middle. So I think we need a pass coverage linebacker. That's where Isaiah Simmons comes in. I think that's where a lot of New York Giants fans want to take Simmons. Giants certainly could. I think it's between, obviously, the linebacker and the offensive tackle in the first round, like I've said all along. And then, obviously, Conley. We received word yesterday that Ryan Conley could be back with the New York Giants by the start of training camp, whenever that may be. Seems to be recovering well from that ACL injury. And Conley last year displayed in his limited action 3 starts that he's actually a very good coverage linebacker. I shouldn't say very good, but a capable linebacker in coverage and a guy that, really does have a nose for the ball. So Conley will be an exciting player to see if he progresses in year 2 with the New York Giants, but certainly still a weak lineup and a lineup that I expect the Giants to try to fix early and often in the draft. And one of our bigger needs is the middle linebacker position. Now we're going to go with the cornerback, and the cornerback was a position I really wanted them to address in free agency because they had so much young talent there that's underdeveloped. They needed that veteran with the departure of Janoris Jenkins, and that's exactly what they did. It was their biggest signing. They went out there, they brought in James Bradbury, formerly drafted by Dave Gettleman. Bradbury's going to bring veteran leadership. He's going to take a lot of the pressure off DeAndre Baker, Beal, everyone else. I think they're pretty set there. I don't expect them to draft a corner at all in this draft, and if they do, like I said with several other positions, it'll be late in the draft for guys that could maybe bring versatility. Maybe a slot corner. They could use a slot corner, but I don't think they're going to use early picks on this position. I like what they've got with Bradbury. I think DeAndre Baker takes a big step forward with this new coaching staff this year. And I actually think the New York Giants have the makings of what could be at least an average secondary this year and hopefully above average, at least at the cornerback position. Safety position, we'll have Peppers back from the injury. Peppers, I think, is going to fit beautifully in this new defensive scheme. The question is, do we need a free safety? Love played well in limited action. Now, he got lost in coverage at times, but Love played well and certainly showed that he could be a very good player for the New York Giants going forward. I would like to have some versatility with Love, line him up in the slot, play him some at the free safety. And to do that, I think they could very well try to address that free safety spot in the first 3 or 4 rounds of this year's draft. But I think Peppers will play very well in this system if he could stay healthy. I think he's one of our, if not our best, one of our best players on this defense. Overall, I think the secondary is at least solid and adequate. I think the defensive line is solid and adequate and could be at least a top 10 unit in the NFL. Where we're really going to struggle is in pass coverage in the middle at the middle linebacker at this point in time, and we definitely need a supreme edge rusher. Will they find that in this year's draft? I don't know, but those are definitely their 2 biggest needs in my opinion right now. On the defense, I would rank their biggest need as being the edge rusher position, the middle linebacker position, and the safety position. Those would be my top 3 biggest needs. On offense, I think it's obvious what the biggest need is. The biggest need has got to be the offensive line, both the tackle and the center. And then after that, I think you need a tall playmaker at the wide receiver position. So that's where I'd rank it. I mean, overall, I'm still standing pat. I'm going tackles our biggest need. I'll go middle linebacker and coverage is our second biggest need. Edge rusher our third. Center our fourth. And I'll go safety our fifth. And a tall wide receiver probably being our 6th biggest need. After that, I think you're looking at players for depth, but they certainly could use improvement in all 6 of those areas. It's just a matter of how the New York Giants prioritize it. I'd like to get a tackle for Jones and a center within the first 3 or 4 rounds of this year's draft. But as always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.